Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today, let's gravity dye a Hemostat Mandala. I'm only going to put the mandala on the front of the shirt, so I need to find the center of the front of the shirt. I'm going to use a washable marker and make a mark down at the bottom at the center and at the top at the center. Then I'm going to grab those marks that I just made, lift the shirt up off the table and give it a shake, and lay it back down. When I do that, you see that I have the front of the shirt isolated, and the back of the shirt is what you see back behind the sleeves of the shirt. I'm going to use a washable marker and make a mark where I'd like for the center of my mandala to be. And I normally like to put the center just about level or a little bit below the armpit of the shirt. I'm going to grab the hem of the shirt and fold it up to the mark that I just made where I'd like for the center of the mandala to be. I'm going to do the same thing with the top of the shirt. To make the next fold a little bit easier, I'm going to place a straight edge underneath this seam, turn the straight edge on its side, and then pinch that seam. Lift it up off of the table, just kind of let the straight edge come out, and that folds the shirt in half. From here, I have one side of the shirt that has several folds, and the other side only has 2 folds. I'm always going to take and fold from the side that has 2 folds toward the side that has a lot of folds. So I'm going to fold each side one more time. This is the basic 8-point mandala. If you'd like to do a 16-point mandala, you would just make one more fold on each side. I'm going to use hemostats on this shirt though, and if I made a 16-point mandala, it would probably be a little bit too much fabric for the hemostats to be able to handle. So I'm going to stop at 8 points. I'm going to use my washable marker and make a mark where the neck of the shirt is, so that I don't take my hemostats out too far. For this shirt, you can use either curved hemostats, straight hemostats, or even a combination of both curved and straight. For this shirt, I'm going to use straight, and I'm going to use 10 and 12-inch hemostats on the shirt. I'll start out with the 10-inch hemostats and transition over to 12-inch hemostats when the fabric gets to be too thick. I have coated my hemostats with heat shrink tubing. That helps to give me a tighter grip on the shirt for one thing, and it also helps to keep the teeth from the hemostats from damaging the fabric. I've placed the first hemostat right at the very end of the shirt at an angle, and then from there I'm alternating placing hemostats on each side of the shirt at an angle and touching the hemostat in front of it. When you make the hemostats touch the hemostat in front of it, you're not going to have big gaps in your mandala. You can add as many or as few hemostats as you want on the shirt, and you can put them in any configuration that you'd like to have on your shirt. The way you arrange your hemostats on the shirt is what changes the look of the mandala. I had a viewer tell me that they put rubber bands around the handles of their hemostats, and that will keep them from flying across the room if they happen to pop off or come unattached. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. So I am doing that right now. I'm adding rubber bands to the handles of my hemostats. By the way, if you've never worked with hemostats, if they come unattached because they're clamped down on pretty thick fabric, they can literally fly all the way across the room. So putting the rubber bands on the handles really does help. Since I've been doing this, whenever I have one that comes unattached, it just really stays in the same place. I just have to come and lock it back down. So this is a brilliant tip if you're working with hemostats to add the rubber bands to the handles. I can't remember exactly who suggested that to me, but thank you so much. It is a great tip. Now that I'm finished, I'm going to straighten out the gravity dyed portion, and then I'm going to place the shirt aside and allow it to dry out completely. I like to apply dye to thick folds like mandalas when they're completely dry. And if you'd like a little bit more information about this, I have a blog out on my website, and I discuss this in more detail. It's basically so that I can get better color saturation in the middle. If you'd like to see my blog, I have a link to my website down below this video in the description. I'm going to gravity dye this shirt, but I am going to try something different, and because this is a more complex design, I'm going to try applying the dye inside where I don't have all the wind. And then I'm going to take the shirt outside for it to be gravity dyed. So let's see how this works. What I did is I don't want to move my shirt too much after I have the dye on it. So I've taken the lid of a plastic tote and I've turned it upside down, and that's what's going to catch any of the excess dye that falls off of the shirt when I'm applying the dye. Then I've placed the shirt on top of a metal rack that has collapsible legs, and I've collapsed the legs and placed the shirt toward the edge of that rack so that the gravity dyed portion can hang over the edge. Then, because the shirt is fully dry, I'm going to lightly spray it with a little bit of soda ash solution that I've placed inside of a plastic spray bottle. That will help the dye to stick to the shirt a little bit better. For this shirt, I went with a color palette of grays, reds, and blues. Now I'm going to alternate those colors in the Hemostat Mandala portion, and then I'm going to add a couple of different colors down below. So right at the very end of the mandala, or what is going to be the center of the mandala, I'm going to use charcoal gray from Dharma Trading Company. Then the other colors that I'm going to use are vintage red from Dharma, and vintage red happens to be one of the special order colors that Dharma offers. You can usually still order those through Dharma, but you have to buy a large quantity. If you don't want to buy a large quantity, then there's a Facebook group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace, and I'll put a link to that Facebook group down below in the description for this video. You can normally find these special order colors out there. People buy them in the large quantities and then they repackage them to sell them in smaller quantities. I also used blueberry from Dharma and Stormageddon from Dharma. By the way, Stormageddon is also one of the special order colors. I used rose wine from Pro Chemical and Dye, Nightfall from Dye Spin, Ashes to Ashes, which is a special order color from Dharma, Aged Wine from Dye Spin, and Faded Denim from Dharma. And Faded Denim is also a special order color. These colors are all kind of darker colors, so that they're darker reds and darker blues. And if you've ever ice dyed with grays, most grays split great. So I'm using some colors that have great color splits. I'm adding these colors to the sections formed by the hemostats in the order in which I gave them to you. If you missed some of those colors, I have them listed down below in the description. For the gravity dyed portion of the shirt, I'm going to add Dances with Raisins from Dharma Trading Company right outside that last set of hemostats. Then up next to the Dances with Raisins, I'm going to add another special order Dharma color called Dusty Rose. I don't take the gravity dyed portion of the dye down very far on the shirt. That's kind of the purpose of the gravity dye, is to let gravity pull that dye down through the shirt. To make sure the dye doesn't blow around too much when I take it outside, I'm going to lightly spray the top of this dye with a little bit of soda ash solution. Now I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top of the dye because I'm going to add quite a bit of ice to the top of the shirt. So I want to make sure that I have plenty of soda ash in the shirt to react with the dye. From here, I'm going to take 2 larger chunks of ice that I've made in some food prep containers and place them on top of the dye. I like to use these larger chunks of ice because it's really hot here in the summer. It's been well over 100 degrees. So it takes them a little bit longer to melt. And when I use the larger chunks of ice, I don't have to make an ice barrier, which I really like. Then I'm going to take this entire setup that I have outside, and I'm going to place the rack on top of my metal shelving unit that I have outside underneath the trees. I'm going to leave the gravity dyed portion of the shirt hanging over the edge and allow the ice to melt. When this first layer of ice melted, I still had some undissolved dye on top of the shirt, and the dye hadn't moved all the way through the shirt. So I came back and added a second layer of ice, and I allowed it to melt. Which, by the way, if you're doing these gravity dyes outside and it's really hot like it is here, you really need to watch your shirt and make sure it doesn't dry out. I know I'm forcing quite a bit of liquid down through the shirt, but I have my soda ash solution in a spray bottle, and I'll come out periodically and just mist it with the soda ash solution. That helps keep the shirt damp, and it helps keep the dye moving down the shirt. I still had a few areas that weren't fully saturated with color, so I added a third layer of ice and allowed it to melt as well. Once the third layer of ice melted, the dye was all the way down to the edge of the shirt, so I took the shirt and I placed it down inside of a plastic tub or tote that has a metal rack in the bottom. Then I put the lid on the tote and placed the shirt back outside in the heat to go ahead and process. Putting it inside of the plastic tote will help keep the shirt from drying out because once the shirt dries out with the dye in it, the dye quits reacting with the fabric. I went ahead and left the shirt for about 24 hours after I placed it inside of the plastic tote before I began rinsing it. I rinsed the shirt like normal by taking it to my utility sink, rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I went ahead and took the hemostats off the shirt and warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I preferred to soak my shirts. So I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside of the hot water, and allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I put the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so the shirt has been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one is really pretty. Red is one of my favorite colors, so obviously I really like this one. I think that the dye flow is really pretty. I love the red and blue combination together, and then the grays just kind of blend those two colors together really well. And because of all the cool color splits in the grays, it just, I don't know, I just think it really looks like a cool shirt. And then the way the dye flowed on the back of the shirt, that looks really cool to me. I don't know exactly what it looks like. It almost looks like water or flowers or something celestial. I don't know, it's just really pretty. I love that dye flow on the back of the shirt. It does have one darker spot right down at the bottom, but honestly, that doesn't bother me. So I think adding the dye inside for this design out of the wind worked really well. I can't do that with all gravity dyes because a lot of them I have to set up the gravity dye outside. But for this particular shirt, I think it worked great. You know, I do have little bits of color here and there, but I don't have quite as many sprinkles as I would probably have had if I would have done the entire thing outside. Where I live, it is windy all the time. I mean, all the time. About the only time it's not windy is right before a tornado hits. So you kind of know that You're going to probably end up with some sprinkles and little flecks of color on your shirt if you're doing gravity dyes outside here. I don't mind them super bad. You know, some designs I actually think they kind of add to the design. But it was fun to do this experiment where I applied the dye inside and then took the shirt outside. I'll have to remember that the next time I do a Hemostat Mandala or another complex design. So I really love this shirt. I love the color splits. I love the color combination. I really love the dye flow, especially on the back of the shirt. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.